Welcome to Monologue, the reflexive interview. My guest today is Dr. Florian Fischer. He is an associate professor at the University of Siegen. He works on laws of nature, dispositions, and especially the philosophy of time. He is president of the Society for Philosophy of Time. But this is all not why I'm interviewing him. I'm interviewing him today because he is the principal investigator of a newly found research network called Change and Changemakers. So welcome, Florian. Yes, thanks for having me. I'm really happy that I'm here now. To begin with, for the people out there, can you tell us a little bit about the network? So what is it all about? So the official formulation would be that Change and Changemakers is an international research network that started in 2020, and it brings together like 15 philosophers working on questions of change and changemakers in various fields of philosophy. And in doing so, the main goal of Change and Changemakers is to enable a dialogue about the future of the debate about persistence, and also a novel theory of persistence will be developed, providing the means for a paradigm shift in philosophy of time. But of course, I mean, this is like the cheesy press statement, but actually it captures quite nicely what the network is about. Wow. So can you tell us how this exciting network came about? There was always in my career this idea of change in the background, and I found other people whose work was also concerned with change. So, you know, I'm currently president of the Society for Philosophy of Time, which I'm very grateful for. And the good thing is that this is like a huge network for philosophers working on time-related issues, and change is a time-related issue. So I kind of knew a lot of people who were working in this field, and then I started to bring them together, asking people who would be interested in working more closely in the form of a network on these issues. And then very, very quickly the core group of people kind of emerged. And given the research of the people, the question quickly formed, and this is about dynamics of change, as I said earlier, processes maybe. Yeah, so this is how the network came about, basically. So it's the network is funded by the DFG, and I know they have certain outputs. What is the intended output of the network? Tell us a little bit about this, please, Dr. Fischer. What we're doing is we are editing a special issue now on these topics, and we're trying to maybe get a big book proposal out at the end of the network. We'll see how this develops after we have got the guest experts involved. I mean, there will be a couple of workshops, and so we want to give it also from the frame a kind of dynamic setup that it can evolve, and then we'll see what will come about. And maybe if this works out well, but this is like something for the future, we will also thinking about having a bigger third-party funded project if it suggests itself afterwards. But what I found much more interesting, if I may, is the philosophical goals of the network. As a short hedge here, I mean, there are 15 people involved, so we will not all have the same agenda, so some of the people will disagree at some of the stuff I'm saying now, but I think this gives the internal dynamics of the network, because I didn't want to have that I knew already what would come out at the end. But one thing what we really want to do is, very modestly, define a new notion of change. What we found is that the debate about change kind of moved itself in a specific corner. And there, like a little nitpicky answer only to a very specialized question was discussed, and an important question. But we want to have the concept more broadly, so we want to understand what change is, not just give an answer. Sorry, just to, if I may interrupt you there, what is the corner you're talking about? Normally the story goes like this. You have one time point, T1, you have another time point, T2, and then you have different properties at these times. So say something is red at T1, and then later at T2 it's blue. And so basically change is defined as the having of incompatible properties, the red and the blue, at different times by the same object. So the incompatibility leads to a contradiction. And then people try to define change in a way that this contradiction doesn't arise. And I always thought, yeah, fine, but contradiction freeness is kind of the beginning of the interesting debate, not its end goal, so to say. So first, that we start with these 2 time points and that we have these 2 incompatible properties. I want to ask, how does it come about? What's making the properties change? What is it that the object at T1 does or have or can to become the object at T2? So basically, starting 1 step earlier. And if you look at it from this direction, you can already see why dynamics plays such a big role, because then you want to see how it evolves over time, how it becomes over time, how it changes. So rather than starting with the it has changed, we focus on the changing. So this is basically, yeah, maybe this is a good way of putting it in a nutshell. Okay. So given this, can you tell us a little bit more about the constellation of the network? So which areas of specialization are involved? Where are the people coming from working there? As I said, we try to be like very general, so spreading through different disciplines within philosophy. So one thing what I thought would be good for the network were having a core question and then having different perspectives on the same question. So the people who are involved come in part from like the history of philosophy, and there they come from a maybe unexpected area. And this is the medieval period. So we have people working on medieval philosophy, and then we have people working on Bergson, because I found it really interesting. Henri Bergson is one of the most famous philosophers of all times, and he is nearly completely ignored in the analytic debate nowadays, but what actually content-wise what he has to say is so relevant. Then we also thought that philosophy and linguistics should work more together. I was talking about the progressive aspect when I said changing, and there's a lot of work in linguistics about the progressive aspect, the imperfective paradox and stuff. But there's not too much interaction within the debate in philosophy, so we got some of the philosophers who work on this interaction, and we also want to have a workshop on the semantics of change, which is between philosophy and linguistics. Also, because of my upbringing, I believe in like getting it formally right, having a formal rigor in this definition of change. So we also wanted to have a workshop on the formal aspects of change and change makers. But, and this may be the biggest point, we also wanted to have people who have a philosophy of science background, but not only philosophy of physics. So I can understand why philosophy of physics is so big, but I also find it interesting to look at perspectives from biology, economics, sociology, and this is why we got people in the network who work on these areas, that we can see the concept of change also be applicable to the way change is used in these sciences. Wow, interesting. And what will the network's work look like? We are just working on some online formats to get things started, because I didn't want to wait till this is over. But basically, as soon as like meeting is safe again, we will have some workshops, and to each of these workshops we will invite guest experts, which then give some input, and then we will also have talks by the members of the network, and then we will work on publications and cross-read our papers, and this will go on for 3 years, so this is the plan, but it will shape up more and more towards the end. Thank you very much for these insights into the network. It is already time to wrap it up. It was a great pleasure to have you here, Dr. Fischer, and I hope that you can join us again once the network has evolved, and I hope to see you all then also. Yeah, that would be nice. I'm happy to come back. Thanks again for giving me the opportunity to talk about our research. It was a great pleasure for me. Thanks for having me.